Well, don't you think they thought other things like perhaps the fight against corruption or the insecurity in the country as their own foundation?
Oh my God, Victor, thank you very much for this question. The question you asked me is the issue of the egg and the chicken. And I think this is, to me, is a huge misconception that is going on in Nigeria, that corruption is the cause of a problem. Corruption is not the cause of a problem, Victor. Corruption is a symptom of a bad system. So if you come to a house, like I said, if you come to a house, your windows is bad, your doors are bad, but you have a foundation problem. That window is the corruption. The foundation is the devolution of powers. So you could be doing something about corruption, Victor, but without doing the underlying problem, the foundational problem, you will still end up in the same situation you find yourself. So that's why I think, to me, corruption is not the cause. So since it's not the cause, it shouldn't be the main objective. It should be an objective, all right, but it shouldn't be the main. So what I was expecting was they come for a conference, a national conference, where Nigerians decide on how we want our federalism to be, or propose amendment themselves, and have it passed in the National Assembly, and as well as the State House Assembly. And then, while that is going on, continue to fight corruption.
Yes, Adamu, I pretty much understand the concerns that you've raised as regard devolution of power. First, you have to understand that this is a constitutional design that entails bringing everybody to a round table and trashing this issue out. First of all, we operate a very centralized federal system. The reason for that is not far-fetched. We are very much dependent on natural resources. Whichever resources lies in the ground of the country belongs to the federal government. So the federal government has a right to give license to firms to extract these resources. You get, there's a centralized tax system. Even if there's a devolution of power, the inability of states to be autonomous in terms of revenue generation, they cannot necessarily formulate any policy because they get allocation from the federal arm of the government. There's no autonomy to state have their internally generated fund, but it doesn't meet the expenditure of the state. There needs to be it entails more than a constitutional design. There is need to, which term should I, there's need to reframe the economic setting of the country. There's need to change ways, channel of distribution, there's a need to address the channel of revenue generation and distribution for us to be able to talk about devolution of power. Certain things need to be put in place because there's no devolution of power without autonomy. I think since you have much knowledge about this devolution of power, you should know that it goes with the economy hand in hand, because I cannot give you autonomy to make your own policies when you don't have the resources to implement these policies. So it is a very tricky situation, and considering the ethnic heterogeneity of Nigeria, at this juncture in time, we have more pressing issues than devolution of power. There are basic needs and necessities of average Nigerians that needs to be put into consideration before, and there's need to be institutional rebasement. Our institutions need to be restructured for us to even consider this the devolution of power.
We should create a fourth tier of government to be known as the municipal government or our community government. So where we live, I live in Damaturu in Yobe State, for example. Damaturu will have its own power. So you cannot take, for example, education, which is best served at the community level or at the municipal level, to give it to Damaturu when Damaturu has no source of revenue. What you need to do is to systematically build Damaturu. When it's ready, you give it to it. It's just like a baby. When a baby is born, the only thing the baby can take is milk. Even, as the baby gradually grows, you can start giving it food. And then when it grows, it can take anything. Like me, I can take anything. So that's how the evolution works. So it is absolutely doable. People have done it. The key point here is you put a system there, and we have a plan. Like I said, I am in a group, we call ourselves the Federalist Movement of Nigeria. I personally have a plan that after you create that fourth year of government, you can start developing the infrastructure of all the various levels systematically, and as businesses grow, because the taxes will go to these communities. For example, sales tax. Anything I buy in Damaturu, part of it will go to Damaturu, and as Damaturu grows with these taxes, if Damaturu is ready, Damaturu can take over education. If Damaturu is ready, Damaturu can take over police. So that way you grow up and you phase out allocation. Allocation is the number 2 problem we have. Number 1 is the system, that force system that we need to have that we do not. And number 2 is allocation. Allocation is bad for Nigeria, but that's how you do it, yeah.
I read someone yesterday who was saying that he was in Maiduguri last week, and the sense of sea was gradually returning, unlike the palpable fear that was in the air the last time he was there. Yes, in the northeast, the president has kept his words to confront the terrorists who are done, and we are beginning to see the result. But then also it then becomes very difficult to say he has completely done very the issue of the Fulani headsmen who have become also a huge threat to national security, not forgetting, like Abu mentioned, the issue of Niger Delta militants. For me, I think that on the issue of Niger Delta, we just need a political solution. It has worked before, even though I did not completely agree with every step. It has worked before. It's worth revisiting and probably reworking the method that was used, but it's something that can be solved if the same political will that has been brought to solving the Northeast challenge is also brought to bear on this issue.
Before you articulate, formulate, and implement policies, the most important aspect of any policy is the revenue imperative of that policy. We're experiencing like a dwindling, revenue income. Like the inflow of revenue is dwindling. There's little foreign investment. So there's pretty much less that the government can do to formulate policies. Like recently, the finance minister in a press conference did mention that agencies should not expect complete funds on appropriation as regarding 2016 budget. So even if these funds have been passed, they shouldn't expect the complete fund, that the government is going to only release funds based on necessity. This spells out that, yes, we are in a recession. The government cannot meet up its policies for obvious reason, our dependence on oil and the fall in the prices of oil. So there is a need to see this from a logical perspective. How do you formulate policies? You need money to formulate policies. Do we have these resources? Yes or no? We don't. So it's very simple. The indicators of increase in rebound in the financial market shows that there's foreign influence, there's inflow of foreign capital, but very minimal. Now that we are having our security issue in check, except for the recent bombings and the Fulani headsmen, like Stanley duly mentioned, there's a possibility of growth in the nearest future, but it is not something that we should expect to happen overnight, just like that.
Again, let's just catch our breath for a short while. We'll take a quick break, and I'll be back shortly. Stay with us.